Hey, brother.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Real quick reminder, hit that like, share, and subscribe for me. PayPal link down below for anybody who wants to share some love. And the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Greetings, Dean. How you doing tonight, brother?
Doing well. I apparently got a call back yesterday from the military, but I didn't answer it because I didn't recognize the number. So I called them back again. So they at least got my message and were reaching out. They didn't leave a message though. But
Awesome. That's somebody's here and somebody hears you. That's the important part now. So,
it's a
and that
start.
was what, contacting the adjutant general or what?
Yeah, I got that through the adjutant general.
Awesome. All right, we
Yeah.
got Norman. Got Norman Long real quick here. Norman Longstaff down below says, Keith, 11 months still haven't paid a fuck all the Rogers owners of Sportnet, and I believe that's his cable or internet or service of some sort. And he's saying there's $2,024.99 in bills that he's doing through a directive by learning the routing numbers. So appreciate that. Brother Norman Longstaff up in Canada. Cell phone, he says. All right, go ahead, Dean. Sorry, I just had to put that out there.
No worries. I was just going to ask you, how you would advise one to address these military people. I mean, ultimately, under their website, it talks about there for emergencies of the people, and that's kind of what I'm going from. Like, this is an
Right,
emergency from one of the people. I'm going to
right.
need you
Yes,
guys to step in and do something.
yeah. It's in regards to the American interests, as well as the fact that the United States citizenship, guys, that's a internationally protected person. So who is the local municipality that's enforcing these codes against an internationally protected person? Who the fuck are they? And what the fuck makes them think that they've got so much authority? They don't. They're the ones that have the miscomprehension. There is no reason that any nation would create an identification system except to find out those rats that are working against them.
So you're basically saying that that's where one would claim to be a United States citizen, whereas my understanding prior has been you don't really want to be that.
You're not going to claim that you're a United States citizen. The claim is, as the record reflects, upon enumeration at birth, I was conferred a nationality of a United States citizenship. That is a gift. In that gift, I was never instructed that as a resident, I was making a claim of a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent who knew how to use that citizen in this usufruct. It's never educated. I've never been educated in it. And if they expect us to come out at 18 years of age and be able to use that, then they need to provide that in the public education system that they provide and allow us to make that choice at the age of 18 rather than making it so at enumeration at birth.
Hence the pressure, I remember, to file for selective service, even though I can look back now and say that nobody held a gun to my head. But
Right.
even though I knew they weren't going to accept me because I had a disease that they automatically would exclude me from in the first place. So, interesting.
And it's just a matter of going forth and correcting the rest of that paperwork. Listen, dude, if I'd have known I was supposed to be a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent in order to use that term, resident, in this usufruct, I'd have qualified for it. I would have had no problem saying, yeah, I'll be glad to fulfill one of those offices for that kind of a pay and that kind of contracting. Yeah, I was born on the land, so why would I not want to do that? The problem is that because they don't educate us in that, we have people that are now filling those offices that don't understand this and will sit there and say, yes, I am a United States citizen, knowing that or whether they know it or not, us knowing that a United States citizen is a United States business. So I want to ask, if the clerk is a United States citizen, and the judge is a United States citizen, and the county attorney is a United States citizen, and the police officers, how are those all businesses, yet they all work for the one business, United States?
Well, even the jury all claim to be United States citizens. And that was something I, at the time, probably should have jumped all over, as definitely not my peers. But
Well, yeah, that's at 15 USC 4724. That trade shows. And that says United States business means United States citizen. So when I walk into that court and they want to put me on trial and I get to jury selection, I say, are you a United States citizen? Yes, disqualified. Well, what do you mean? I can't disqualify him. What I can do is disqualify me. I'm not one of your peers. You're a business. I'm not. Next. Are you a United States citizen? Yes. Disqualified. There's no way that this, if people understood this system, that it would work the way it does. And that's 95% guilty rate, because people are guilty of not knowing. They're not guilty of the act. They're guilty of not knowing. That's even these people that are doing this stuff. They're guilty of not knowing as well. That's at Isaiah 54:17. No tongue shall prosper against you. You shall rise up and condemn anybody that places that judgment against you, because that's not their place. Ask them, are you a United States citizen? Yes. Ask me what I am. Ask me.
are you a United States citizen?
No, I'm your brother. I'm a child of God. Aren't you?
Well, yes.
So how are you a United States citizen if a United States citizen is a person and he's no respect, or he is a respecter of no persons, and you're claiming to be the person?
That's a bit of a tough one to answer.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you're not going to come to me in the spiritual sense, I'm going to know it that quick. I'm not going to play games with anybody. And I'm tired of getting upset and pissed. I'm just going to ask them simple questions that are going to wake them the fuck up, or they're going to have to admit their ignorant stupidity. And that's what it is. Ignorant stupidity. That shows that you just don't want to research, because it is that simple.
Well, I was in a place I didn't want to be, being forced to be there through coercion and distress. They kept arresting me over and over again, making it very clear they're going to keep coming after me. Yeah, it was a bad scene. But
Yep.
yeah, they definitely try to force that on everyone, for sure.
Yep. Well, and now that you've got communication with the Adjutant General's office too, that's the important aspect of the chaplain. Ask him now, when he has a real issue in life, who does he seek counsel in? And most likely he's going to tell you the chaplain. Tell you what, why don't we get the chaplain involved in this then? See where that's going? Yeah. Exactly. So that's that point of counsel. They cannot refute that. That's even where the military seeks their counsel. So let's get into tonight's presentation. We're talking about the triage of administration of military venues for revenue. And that's that graph that I show you as it relates to the state's vital statistics jurisdiction. And it creates a point of administration of a record. Again, it's the individual's name and number that identify the record. And that's what they're administrating. Nothing more, nothing less. So it says, and this is LIIWEX, Cornell Law School again, administrative law refers. Now I want you guys to pay attention to this as we read this. The administrative law refers to the branch of law governing the creation and operation of administrative agencies. Okay? Operation, creation of administrative agencies. So when they take you to that administrative court, they're saying they created and are going to operate under administrative agencies, and you are one of those agents. And that this branch of law governs you. Okay? The powers granted, showing that this branch of government, administrative agencies, is part of a trust. And that the powers that they administrate are granted from a greater source. Two administrative agencies are particularly important. It's all about imports and exports. That's why the language is constructed the way it is. Along with, it's a vehicular language. Along with substantive rules that such agencies make, and the legal relationships between agencies and other government bodies and the public at large. So, it's relationship between the agencies, and those are legal relationships. So the administrative branch is the legal part. Other government bodies and the public at large. So what do they say law is? Law refers to a system of rules. Law refers, like I've been saying, these are not law as you might think. These are nothing but policies, rules, regulations, acts, edicts, ordinances, proclamations, declarations, and otherwise, which are full of words that are defined, and those definitions are just other men's opinions. To a system of rules that regulate the conduct of a community and is often enforced by a controlling authority through penalties. A controlling authority, and the one we have in this system today, is a military. That is where they get their grant from. Okay? That military authority as other government body. A government can be defined as the body, entity invested with the power to manage a political unit, organization, or more often, a state. So we have a military governing body that's managing a political unit, and you are a contract postal unit for that political unit under a military uniform code and don't know the first thing about it. How is that invested with the power? Remember our plenary powers, having the full power? If you have to refer to somebody else as being your boss and you don't know what you can do or not, you're just doing your job, then you don't know the first thing of what you're doing. And let me put it out there, folks. In my opinion, if I'm going into a job in any of these positions, which I've done throughout my entire life, if I start at the bottom, my intent is to go to the top. That means anybody I need to go through, I'm going through. I'm displacing you. That's the nature of the beast. If you want a job, go get it. But if you want to flip burgers, you can do that for yourself. It says, government from the Latin locution gubernare means steer a ship or vessel. So let me ask you, everybody, if you think all along that government meant mind control, see all these gurus going around telling you government means mind control. No, it means the mentality of governing, which means that you give directives. You're the one directing this motherfucker. It's my bus. It's got one seat, my foot on the gas pedal. Ain't nobody gonna draw the map for me. I got my hands on the steering wheel. I must.
So that's the citizenship they're steering, right?
Correct.
The vessel.
Correct. And that's the importance of understanding that United States citizenship. They gave you a vessel known as a nationality, and you get to steer it. But they never teach you how to steer it, or that you have to steer this vessel, that there's even a vessel there. They don't tell you the construct of that legal name and what it entails on an envelope known as a vessel. Carries cargo. They only tell you to write your name, first name, last name, uppercase and then lowercase. And then make sure you remember your address, boys and girls, because if you ever get lost and the police need to help you out because they're good people, they can take you back home. Yeah, you keep believing that. That's not why you need to remember the address.
I saw a judge once threaten a guy to be deported if he didn't admit he was a U.S. citizen in the courtroom, and it made me wonder. It's like, well, they're not asking me the same thing, and where are they going to deport me to? Back to Kansas? What the hell?
Well, yeah, you going to stub me back to my mom? Fucking ignorant shit. And again, that's at Leviticus 5 or Leviticus 25, verse 23, folks. The land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And God formed man of the dust of the ground. That's where you go back to. So who the fuck are you to tell me where I can and can't go? It's kind of shit that just makes me wonder who the hell these people think they are. So let's look at public. Public, the body politic. There's no way, you cannot make it any simpler than this, folks. It is a political body made of the people that are construed to be a military faction that are running an operation, a business. And the pure governmental concept is that you're supposed to know how to direct yourself as a businessman. Nobody teaches you that.
So is this? I've had people tell me that. I've had others tell me not to be one of the people, because it says here, probably because of what it says right there, the body politic, the people. So that to be one of the people is to be part of a political organization.
Or the people of a state. This is the difference.
Difference between the we the people in the Declaration of Independence, or
right, we the people. That's American. That was referring to the Native Indians.
Right. So I'm not one of those. Is it wrong to claim to be one of those?
No. I'm saying you don't want to claim to be a part of the body politic, or the people of a state, nation, or municipality. You can claim to be one of the people, but you need to define it as something other than a state, nation, or municipality. I'm one of the people of the children of God.
I see.
You can't get any more public than that. That's already known more than any separate or distinct people of a state, nation, or municipality that is distinctly classifying itself as a unit that the rest of the people don't know about or should know about as being distinctly different. See, everybody wants to take on that business mentality of advertisement and say, well, we got the best product. Don't we all get all of our products from God? So isn't it more about the talents? And those talents are determined about, are dependent upon whether you're being truthful and honest. Greetings, sister.
Greetings, brother. I was just reading, and I hope you're okay too, because unless there's some kind of photo you put with a black eye, I wouldn't want anybody to hurt you.
Yeah, I'm fine. That's years back. That's years back.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, I was looking at 26 USC 7871 under the definition of qualified Indian lands. I don't know if you want to pull it up. It talks, yeah. You got to go midway down the page. And it talks about the land being in a trust, since you're talking about that stuff today. It under letter E, like an echo. 7871 under Title 26.
Definitions. For the purpose of this paragraph, qualified Indian lands. The term Indian lands means land which is held in trust by the United States for the benefit of an Indian tribe. What does Indian mean, folks? Is it different than American? Is it different than American Native or Native American? Indian tribe, exception for certain private activity bonds. In general, in the case of an obligation to which this paragraph applies. So again, it's the record, it's not the people. Paragraph 2 shall not apply. Such obligation shall be treated for purposes of this title as a qualified small issue bond. So the qualified Indian lands of an Indian tribe is a qualified small bond. It's still a commercial venue. Doesn't matter. Same thing here, Indian tribe. The term Indian tribe means any Indian tribe, band, nation, or other organized group or community which is recognized as eligible for special programs and services provided by the United States to Indians because of their status as Indians. It's still a commercial eligibility. It's an eligibility to enter into commerce, saying that you're not provided something naturally. That's that want and desire. You do not need this government to give you directions. There are some people we do qualify as, yeah, they're mentally incapable. And so, yeah, we need somebody that can help them out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we need this huge governmental body politic that turns around and takes on upon a oligarchy stature and controls the lives of everybody through a commercial system, saying everybody's performing business-wise. That's why I urge everybody to reconsider your conveniences. So let's go back to it. It says, under the authority of the government or belonging and available to the people. not private. So once you put that Indian tribes as public lands, it's not private, right? Do you guys not see the inconsistencies in their codes? Because that's what I see. And then it goes on to say it may refer, again, to an entity, agency, or activity. This distinction comes up in the context of public and private schools, public and private utilities, public and private hospitals, public and private lands, and public and private roads. For example, in California versus San Luis Obispo Sportsman Association, the California Supreme Court interpreted public lands in the state constitution section relating to public fishing to mean state-owned land, the use of which by the state is also compatible with use by the public. So in other words, they can claim a public use if they want to have a canoe trip and go down a river for a public organization. But they can't supersede the private right of a fisherman to be fishing on that riverbank and then interfere with his fishing lines because they want a canoe close to the bank. There are certain rights of passage and portage, as well as respect to interests, public or private. You can't deny a man to fish because you want to travel down that river and destroy his fishing line by running over his fishing. That's why you're supposed to be in communication by observance on the riverways and waterways along the banks. Be on the lookout for people that are doing such activities. You don't want to disturb them. And that only property which is being used for a special purpose that is incompatible with its use by the public. For example, lands used for prisons or mental institutions do not fall within the scope of this constitutional provision. Why? Because those are private institutions, not public. Overview. And again, just stop me if you have anything you need to say or anything. And remember, folks, the link is down there for anybody that wants to join the panel.
Before you go forward, brother, we were talking also the last time you were on, and you were talking about gifts. And I typed the code into the chat for you to look at once you go through what you're going through. I yield.
Okay. And so as we continue on, it says, administrative law encompasses laws and legal principles governing the administration and regulation of government agencies. Nowhere does it say anything else, folks. Administrative law encompasses laws and legal principles governing the administration and regulation of government agencies. Okay? So when you go out and you get that ID or that driver's license and they want to see your ID, it's because they are trying to regulate you under administrative law because you're carrying a government ID. It says the state of Iowa on the top. That's their property. They get to administrate that property. And if you have an agreement with them to do so, they are using you as an agency. You are the agent.
Hey, let me ask you something about that. If every license the state's giving is basically verifying you're a federal business or entity, and yet that's what they require to get the cannabis in the stores in these states that's allegedly not federally recognized, isn't there some conflict in there?
That's what I'm saying. That's that American interest and the internationally protected person. It's upon the American interest that if the United States confers a citizenship or nationality of citizenship, United States citizenship, which is an internationally protected person, then they would not only would they want to protect that person as an internationally protected person, but wouldn't they want to also protect the guy that they authorized to hold that for them? Wouldn't that placate that in its most basic sense that there is a peace treaty with them and that they're not supposed to be going out accusing them of committing crimes against the United States? This is the blasphemy of it all. It's just stupidity. That's why God says you don't have authority over another man. That's why it says in the scripture, owe no man anything but to love one another. For to love one another is to fulfill the law. So why are you charging another man? It just, none of it's made any sense to me for many years. All right. So, as we continue on, it says, agencies are delegated power by Congress. See? That's stating that you have somehow some kind of communication with Congress through federal agency or office. Okay? To act as agencies responsible for carrying, you're a carrier, you're a common carrier, contract postal unit, commonly carrying ID of agency for carrying out certain prerogatives from Congress. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, laying, collecting taxes, duties, imposts, and excises.
So Keith, does that mean the ones that are carrying are the Article 1, Section 814 person?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's saying that you have a 14th Amendment citizen granted by the government that you've never been taught how to use, and they're specifically using it against you, whether they know it or not, because they honestly believe that they are a citizen too. They honestly believe they are a resident. If you have a job as a paralegal, you are not a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent. You have a contract that has that's connected to some type of interlocal agreement. But if you are not under oath, then that license is just saying that you contracted with somebody that contracted or is an agent of the office or agency of the United States somewhere along the line, whether it be a state or municipal ordinance.
Many places, the Department like of Motor Vehicles or licensing are totally separate agencies. They're not even part of the state, or they claim to not be.
Exactly, they're private. It's like I was saying with the prison industry and the what was the other one? But yeah, they're private. These people are running private operations, and you're not even supposed to be holding that identification, like I said. Just like you're not supposed to be holding those Federal Reserve notes. That's corporate property that belongs to certain people. And when you're caught using it in this usufruct and you don't know how it's used, they're going to use that system, the whole system, against you.
Right. And they don't even offer an alternative, because good luck getting fuel, good luck getting the cannabis, good luck. I know allegedly how to walk out of a grocery store with stuff, but haven't figured out the other stuff.
Well, it also seems like these agents and agency can also be considered an agency as well, being organized under.
Well, watch what it says next. This is literally what's happening under the people being able to incorporate under the laws of the United States. Just the corporate organization and saying so is creating of an agency. It says agencies are created through their own organic statutes which establish new laws, and in doing so, create the respective agencies to interpret, administer, and enforce those new laws. Do you know a contract is just a bunch of set of laws and you can create your own contracts? That's all it is. Those contract clauses are referring to laws. Now, you want to refer to the administrative laws, then you're probably going to be subject to the administrative code. That's why I refer to the scripture and I show how everything correlates. That's my reference. That's who I seek counsel in. And then he shows me, well, that's this, this, and this in these codes here. That's how I see it. That's how I hear it. Whether you believe me or not, I don't know and I don't care. Generally, administrative agencies are created to protect a public interest rather than to vindicate private rights. Oops. That's administrative law. Administrative law does not, it works for the public interest rather than to vindicate private rights. Are you
So
paying attention?
yeah, it sounds like it's against the people than being for the people.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's when you've been through it, it's like, oh, that makes sense.
So let's show what the next part is and the fallacy here. The structure of agencies. Some textualist scholars argue that administrative agencies are unconstitutional, particularly because of the arguably unconstitutional delegation of lawmaking power.
Hey, Keith, that last bit though, and even this bit too, how that what does that have to do with the fact that if public service is a position of trust?
Because everybody involved in the public trust on the public side are servants. Everybody that is trying to have their rights, their private rights vindicated, are on the private side and they are the benefactors. They're the ones being violated because all of these administrative agencies are presuming that everybody is part of the administrative agency, and that's false. Again, if
Oh,
this
I
is,
see. Oh, right. They're
yeah,
bringing us all under the umbrella, not
right,
it says, but rather than to vindicate private rights, it proves that they can't or they won't, or I mean, I don't know, they just
right.
don't.
Well, that's because they're taking everybody under the umbrella, as you called it, through the identification. If you've got an identification of any sort, you're presumed to be part of the trust on the public side, therefore a public servant, not a benefactor. This is why I'm saying, if it's a public trust, where and who are the beneficiaries or benefactors? How come the record is not reflecting that? Find it. You show me who the beneficiaries are recognized as beneficiaries, and I'll kiss your ass. The only way it's ever recognized is by vindicating those private rights through what's known as a private relief law. That's where you create your laws.
You know, I was thinking, Keith, maybe I'm not saying it's just my opinion. I'm thinking maybe hypothetically these beneficiaries may be individuals. It's just a hypothetical thought.
Well, no, it goes to the point again that if you get an ID, you don't recognize yourself as the beneficiary benefactor. You can't carry an ID and recognize yourself as a benefactor and say, well, I'm the benefactor, because you're carrying an ID that proves that you don't understand what that ID is. That ID is evidence, material fact evidence that you are a public servant under the very state that issued it.
So that means if the state that issued it is the organization, that means the agent is um, is operating on behalf of the agency, the private agency.
Correct.
Okay. And
Well, and just
so
And
because
that,
you have that doesn't mean you
go ahead. We lost you.
go on, Dean. He was saying something. I want to hear what his comment is.
Oh, you didn't hear what I said?
No, you dropped out somewhere.
I was asking if that's a hat we can wear and take off at our own discretion. So they
Yes,
say we
yes,
have that identification. Can we not use it and then not always be operating under it, so to speak?
yes, but that's the point. That's the point I was saying about earlier. Nobody was educated on it. So if you get that ID, then you do the doing business as and make sure that you create a new name. See what I'm saying?
That
Sounds
would
like a lot of work.
that would appear that someone will that fall in the category as using the new name as a DBA,
Yes.
doing business as?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm doing business as, and the business name is Keith Little. But you'll notice, surprisingly enough, it's not upper and lowercase. It's all uppercase.
Well, wouldn't that appear to be a title? That would be a title of a
Exactly.
profession or a duty that you're performing.
Exactly. Guess what the United States is? It's the all caps. I'm doing business in the title of the all cap name. You express the United States citizen rather than the state resident. United States citizen is an entitlement. So you use the title.
So
So it goes
where would the resident fall under the title due to the fact that the United States, being the all caps, is also titled? Will that fall under some kind of a uh,
the legal name, upper and lower case, is the authorized representative. If that is the authorized representative, what is it they are representing? The all uppercase. See, the state is a representative. Does that make sense? It's just it's authorized representative is what that line says there. And if that's the authorized representative, then what is it representing? It's not representing you. It's representing a corporate entity. So now you used the corporate entity and the representative entity as the natural entity. You have to learn the differences. That's all it is. The state is that representative, and it has to be relative to the United States. The state is always going to teach you to write the legal name, whereas the United States name is the all caps. That's the corporate entity that the legal name represents. So some textualist scholars argue that nonetheless, the current jurisprudence in administrative law deems agencies unconstitutional and necessary, agencies constitutional and necessary in the current society in a functional and pragmatic sense. That's fine. I agree with that. But what the discussion here is that there are some agencies that are in fact unconstitutional and others that are. The ones that are would be the ones that would be deemed needed for the assistance of those people that couldn't do agency of themselves privately. So they would have to be involved in that public trust, not as public servants, but as the beneficiaries taking part of those programs.
Those would be wouldn't that be the very vindication of individual private rights that they mentioned before? Isn't that the very thing we were talking about now?
Exactly. But that's only going to be carried out as they deem fit. So again, it's very important and inherently empowering when we realize that if we can be the agency having the full power, then we should be able to make those lawmaking power decisions ourselves and say, well, listen, I understand that your administrative law encompasses laws and legal principles governing the administration and regulation of government agencies. So you tell me where you can govern me if I don't even have an ID.
Isn't that under the federal rules of civil procedure for standing that you would be by the individual's like own house or whatever? There's that blurb in there. I don't remember the exact language, but it has.
Yeah. You have to have some kind of government instrumentality in your possession, and they have to have record that they delegated that to you in order for them to be able to pose an administrative record that refers to a branch of law.
No. Okay, I thought it meant what I was suggesting is referring to the domicile. If an agency can do their own statutes and create themselves, then yeah, it's saying that we can do the same, right?
Oh yeah.
And in the federal rules of civil procedure, they recognize that it could be by the law of, is it the plaintiff's domicile? Anyway, it has something to do with standing, and it has to do with your domicile, like your rules, your laws.
Right. The law of the land. The law of domicile is the common law of the land, and that's why they say a jury of your peers. Okay, you show me a jury of my peers that recognizes Leviticus 25, verse 23. You show me.
Well, I
Because otherwise,
think that they can. They would have to show the jury of peers will be under their jurisdiction, not through the
absolutely.
Creator.
And that's what I'm saying. Every last one of them will have to pull out an identification to be able to prove that they can sit on that jury. That identification is nothing but a material evidence of corporate activity. It has no standing in law.
So that would be under corporate business activity, organized
Administrative law.
Right.
Administrative law.
Right, which would be through the executive branch, right?
Well, no, it's administrative branch. You've got an ID saying you're a trustee just like they are.
Right, but that means they're perpetrating to act under the executive.
No.
Under executive orders?
No.
Okay.
No, they're still operating under administrative law. That's this here. This is all administrative law. It's all administrative law. It's talking about agencies of that particular political body. That's what they're administering. And if you've got an ID, I don't care if it came from executive branch of the government, legislative branch of the government, judicial branch of the government, it's going to be administered. That's where the enforcement is. Administration. Everything under that administration is going to refer to another branch of law, and that's just a reference. We have to understand that the ID is the blasphemy upon ourselves. We don't understand what that ID is or how to use it, then we shouldn't be touching it. Yet they teach us the legal name at 5 years of age and don't tell us anything about it from that point on. Nothing. So we go on. It says, indeed, because Congress cannot enforce and administer every law it enacts, it must rely on the agencies to administer, interpret, enforce, and otherwise regulate various federal laws that Congress has enacted. So it does, again, it's stating what I just said. It doesn't matter what the executive orders are. It says, indeed, because Congress cannot enforce and administer every law it enacts, proving that they admit to the fallacy of Congress, it must rely on the agencies to administer, interpret, and enforce, and otherwise regulate various federal laws that Congress has enacted. So it's telling us right there, no matter what the intent or the interpretation of Congress, because Congress cannot administer and enforce every law it enacts, it must rely on agencies to do so. So I'm telling you the same thing. In order for you to be able to rely on vindication of private rights, you must be able to interpret the administrative law and determine whether it applies to you or not. And if not, then be able to explain it to them how it doesn't. Greetings, Brother King Obey. How you doing today?
Greetings, Keith. Greetings. Just listening in, listening to your, breakdown of the administrative law. A lot of people don't understand how this works. Like, one of the elements that I talk about is source of law. They got to be able, like, this is the problem. You got to trace everything from its origin back to its original source. Like, where did this come from? And if you can trace it, then you can determine if it apply to you. Then you can determine under the contract if to disqualify the contract, because it's got to be a meeting of the minds. If
Right.
you don't understand them components, right? That's why I talk about source of law and then the operation of law and then the application. Because a lot of us are volunteering. So I did a video called The Real ID. So what they're trying to do is take, like when we go to the IRS, they tried these social security numbers, these EIN numbers, all these different numbers. They tried to turn these into tax identification numbers so that they saying, look, you agreed to be taxed. You agreed to take on this public debt without giving you full disclosure. And every man, woman, and child have a right of what they call due process, which you have a right of informed consent and informed notice. They can't get past that. They never gave you a right to an attorney for any of these things because they bring you into a legal process.
Yep. And that's, you mentioned that informed consent too. Informed use of credit is a powerful one as well, because that's what we're dealing with, is the full faith and credit of the United States. If they conferred everybody a nationality of United States citizen based upon full faith and credit, then why, again, I ask, why is not the United States citizen being allowed to express that extension of credit in its proper form? Because we haven't been educated on how to do that. The banks do it, but they do it behind our backs, and then the courts and the administrative processes say that we owe. Excuse me, you're using our fucking credit and then charging us for that because we don't know. This is the inherent thing about that Jose 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I urge everybody to understand that the inherent benefit in all things is the knowledge. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But the true principle is that he goes around, turns around, and expresses that talent to others so they too can feed themselves. So we go on, continue on. It says, interestingly enough, folks, some of the most notable agencies are the executive agencies such as the Department of Justice and Department of Defense. The two main organizations that you need to deal with in correcting the records, because it's the Department of Defense that has the enumeration at birth, and it's for the Department of Justice Services to make sure that you're not going to trade with an enemy. So they provide a real ID system for federal officers and contracting agents. and you are a contract postal unit using a resident address when you filled out a change of address along with that SS5 and moved out of your mom and daddy's home. Other examples include some independent agencies such as the Federal Trade Commission, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Environmental Protection Agency. This is one of my favorites. We're going to show you here in a few. All of which are independent from the direct control of the president. These agencies have enormous power to interpret the broad congressional laws, enact various rules defining, interpreting relevant statutes, enforce those rules, and adjudicate matters according to those regulations. So if this agency has the power to adjudicate, do you have the power to go beyond the administrative courts for that adjudication? Don't ever let them tell you otherwise. Because again, these are the organizations they get their powers from. They just reference the administrative branch of law, wherein you have the executive, legislative, and judicial, which are the true military powers that they are delegated. So it goes on. Statutory regulation of agencies. And remember, statutes, in order to implement them, they have to be contract terms and conditions. And if they implement that statute, it's a contract that they already have in play with the federal government through those executive orders. However, despite the agency's enormous powers, the governmental agencies must still act within constitutional and statutory parameters. These and other limits have been codified, for the most part, into a statute known as the Administrative Procedure Act, and state analogs, which provides for the roles and powers of the agencies and the procedures by which they must abide in all their functions. APA categorizes administrative functions into formal and informal rulemaking and adjudication, not lawmaking and not enforcement, which have binding effects, as well as guidance, which has no binding effect. These are just references, folks. They are not laws, and therefore they are merely guidances, and therefore they have no binding effect. If you don't understand the language, I urge you again to unlearn what you've learned, get a concise English handbook, and relearn what these simple statements are saying. The APA further prescribes certain procedural rules by which the agencies need to follow before acting in one of the functions listed. So, like I've said, when it comes to personal jurisdiction, they fail every time. Personal jurisdiction refers to a court's authority to adjudicate the rights and liability of the defendant. Before a court can exercise power over a party, the Constitution requires that the party has certain minimum contacts with the forum in which the court sits. The International Shoe versus Washington, this is saying that you must be part of that administration. You must have a statement somewhere saying that you have an allegiance to the United States. That's the conference of the nationality.
So when I was reading we was talking about the doctrine of merger, and I was reading the doctrine of property and pledges, and it was talking about how personal property got to be pledged. like you said. So
Yeah,
they got to have an oath of office. They got to have. They don't have nothing. So one of the things that I learned about using stuff as evidence, right? So they say anything you can say will be used in the court. Anything you say can and will be used in the court of law. So just by the fact you saying that you are a U.S. citizen, there hold the presumption, dangle it over your head without any factual basis.
correct.
But then at the same token, I looked at this, right? We've been using these administrative rules wrong. So one time I was in court, I I tried to present a statute. The court said, "Oh, you can't present that statute without it being certified." I printed it off online. So I went to the General Assembly of my state and got that statute and certified it and printed it as evidence because that's how the corporation speak. It can't speak on its own, right?
Yep,
I used
exactly.
I used it as evidence against them. I say anything y'all say can will be used against you in the court of law.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what we're talking about. This here, same with this here, waiving of personal jurisdiction, continue on with how the court can't have personal jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction can generally be waived, unlike subject matter jurisdiction. Therefore, if the party being sued appears in court without objecting to the court's lack of personal jurisdiction over them, it tells you right there that the court is lacking personal jurisdiction over them. And if you appear in court without objecting to it, the court will assume that the defendant is waiving any objection to personal jurisdiction.
So Keith, that means
It's
if
still
you object, if one objects to whatever the court is purporting to put on private men or women, once you object, they can't go any further, correct?
They don't post to have they don't post to object, right?
No,
I
I
mean
mean
they
if
don't
private,
post to like this is what I do. This is what I tell people. Cut that down. To put in a notice of objection, take the court and make them put in notice, judicial notice, right? You have to put that on the record. If the court you this is what our job is to disqualify jurisdiction. They have a requisite to meet their standard of operation of law. If they haven't, if you can show where they don't got jurisdiction, the prosecution has to qualify his position. They are at,
right.
if they can't prove right, and once you put in a judicial notice, you asking the court to take notice that the prosecution has not qualified. This is all due process issues.
Right. And just like it says here, the court will assume that the defendant is waiving any objection to personal jurisdiction. And it says, therefore, the party is being sued appears in a court without objecting to the court's lack of personal jurisdiction. So if there's nobody shows up in court, then the court still lacks personal jurisdiction. So 11 cases signed UCC 1-308, they lack personal jurisdiction. I never appeared. They adjudicated the case anyway, saying that this is such and such a fine, but yet the statement still says that they lacked personal jurisdiction.
well, Keith,
They
the only reason
they never acquired it.
the only reason I'm asking that question because in my situation, I objected to them not having jurisdiction over myself, but I did mention that the only one can have jurisdiction over myself would be the Most High, and I left it
Right.
there. I couldn't do
But
anything else but that.
but sometimes you have to be able to correlate that to what they're saying. And so this is the perfect one to state that. It says, typically, for a court to have personal jurisdiction over a defendant, these are the things they need to qualify. The plaintiff needs to serve the defendant in the state in which the court sits. And the defendant needs to voluntarily appear in court. It cannot be forced, period. Under Federal Rules of Civil Procedure Rule 4K, they're supposed to give you a summons and a waiver form for personal jurisdiction so that you can grant the court personal jurisdiction. This is again just reaffirming that the court not only lacks personal jurisdiction, but they know it. Okay? Now, the next one I want to point out is Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 17, and very clearly and plainly, in plain, concise English. Read it, people. This is a plain statement that's saying the plaintiff and the defendant have to be of the capacity of being public officers. You're supposed to be.
It says it plainly in black and white. In fact, someone tried to
You-
debate me that because they figure that they wanted to sue these public servants. And I asked them, I said, do you understand Public Rule 17 exactly what it's saying? And I mentioned to them, in order for them to be able to perform those duties, they would have to be a public official and in a public official's capacity. And then it tells you you have to be an executor, a guardian, a trust, and so forth. So was I not explaining it logically, or I don't know? Can you enlighten me, please? Thank you.
Well, that's part of the thing about being able to correlate it to codes and language that they can see and read for themselves. So it's a matter of being able to. Well, it's like the lingua franca. We got to remember the lingua franca of this English language is a third-person language to help people understand that don't have the same native language. So we really have to get back to that and really concentrate on just the real simple words to try to get our points across. And real quick here, I got to go grab a drink and stuff, and I'll be right back. So please enjoy the break. And in the meantime, God bless. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And enjoy a video I did here last night or the night before. Let me see here. Make sure I got it up. So imagine this and imagine that. Go ahead and chit chat and give facts that live fat and mismatch and dispatch that true latch that did catch and attach the idea hatch from a mishap and a bit that quit that of which that she was blind. It's the latter that gathers the chatter that matters and flatters the flat earthers and trolling truthers and masters of the rappers of the OG chapters, which captures the stature of the pastures that are plastered in the hereafter your raptured minds. To sit and spitting and splitting decisions with precision and a vision of committing and missions and supervision of depositions and the acquisitions for fruition. Now lickety split, flick my bick, bit my lip in a bit and I bit. Clip that shit while I make it real quick as I flip the script and spit a lick to fit into wit with no end it. So damn lit and firm ass grip like water, drip, drip, drip. Have patience though, that ain't it. Stay right where you sit as I kick it and stick it anywhere you pick it. Make sure you listen so you don't miss it and feel like a misfit or a dimwit that ain't worth shit. And if you don't like it and have a fit, here's my ass. I'll kick it and kiss it and lick it with a spit it. Everything you've seen from Project Bluebeam, how to chew things, what you do when you pee, what foods do you eat, anything about shoes or feet, how you're so damn unique. But you seem to be in a fool's scene that only you believe when this is a new scene and especially brewed gene that grew mean and I ain't here to play. So say what you gotta say, make sure it's not a replay, and let's remember we don't have all day. Because you can't battle me or rattle me. Just like you can't paddle me, you can't saddle me or straddle me like cattle feet. It doesn't matter to me what you blabber to me. What's sadder to see is that you're not badder than me, just fatter than me, and you have a flatter chest than me. So take the bad beat with your cracked teeth and chapped cheeks and grab the back seat and rest your flat feet. This is one OG you can't beat.
Everything I do.
Okay. Greetings, and we are back. We are back. All right. And, brother, I see you dropped a couple things in back. Yes, yes. I speak about 1 U.S.C. 1 here and there. That's that words denoting numbers, gender, and so forth, where they talk about the certain definitions. And I'm going to be pulling up a post a friend of mine put up a couple years back in regards to that, and posting it on my YouTube here. And so be watching for that pretty soon, as it defines the very code 1 U.S.C. 1 and shows how you truly have to be insane to be walking around with one of them IDs. It's quite poignant.
It's just
Oh.
all babble. It's just babble. All of this stuff conflicts with each other. It's conflict of law. Like,
Right. That's what I try to point out is when you can see this stuff for the inconsistencies that are there and the impossibilities that bear with it, then you should be able to put at rest a lot of these issues, particularly for yourself, in such a manner that you can put them to rest with others around you, including your family, friends, and those that assume you are under their administration. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort, and it's going to be a bitch, because these people are just as indoctrinated as I was. And I'm telling you, I'm a stubborn motherfucker. So, let's see here. I think that's, you guys kind of get the point there. And you can go ahead and read on to the rest of this stuff. And there's an interesting case to be read. Chevron USA Inc. versus NDRC. Couple others. Skidmore versus Swift. A very good read right there. I urge you. It's a small case that you can pull up and read quickly and get a good concept of what we're talking about here, particularly when it comes to that the private vindication of rights. You know, that's the whole thing. And there's this public overlay that encompasses and seeps into every aspect of your life. And like we were talking about earlier, there's certain times where you have to wear certain hats. This is one of those hats that you seem to be wearing 24/7, and you really need to learn how to discern the differences. Let's go on to the next one. And then, the next one is administrative law. This is another LIIWEX. And we're just going to read through here a couple things here. And I believe it's also going to, there's plenty of pages. It says administrative law, administrative agency, a government body authorized to implement legislative directives by developing more precise and technical rules than possible in a legislative setting. So you see what the administrative offices or administrative agency is. It's actually taking over the legislative directives, the letter of the law, by interpretation of that law and setting forth of their own rules according upon their own interpretations. The important, the very pertinent part of why it's so important that you learn this stuff too. Because that's what they're doing. They're using their own opinions based upon what you present in these courts and in the documentations. And when you can learn how to stay out of the courts and present documentation without fear and with exactness and specifics, it gets easier and easier. The people see it as a piece of paperwork and not some screaming idiot on the other side of the counter. It removes the screaming idiocy. I urge you. You get into and start digging into your solitude and your quiet time to do some research and see how effective it can be in your written communications. So we continue on. It says Administrative forfeiture, administrative hearing. Administrative hearings are the proceedings conducted by administrative law judges for disputes involving the regulatory jurisdiction of an executive agency. And that's why they need your signature to execute the documents. So now we see the administrative agency under administrative law through an administrative hearing and administrative law judge that takes us all the way up to the executive branch. Again, 48 CFR 52.212-5, contract terms and conditions required to implement executive orders statutes or executive orders commercial items, commercial services, and your personal services for administration, offices, and agencies by the execution of a signature without knowing the capacities is all they need. So that's what they indoctrinate you to. The Administrative Procedure Act, Administrative Offices of the United States Courts, that's that Form AO 430, when they talk about equity. Administrative Procedure Act. The Administrative Procedure Act is a federal act that governs the procedures of administrative law. APA is codified in 5 U.S.C. 551 through 559. What's that? Individuals' records maintained on individuals. 5 U.S.C. 552A. Records maintained on individuals. Did you know that license you got in your pocket, that's an individual license? It's not a group license. It's that simple, folks. So let's take a look at the next one. And I'm not going to read the entire thing here. This is Triage on Etam Online. And they got a bunch. And just so you see, it comes from sacrifice, chaos, companion, judge, deliver, reprobate, respite, cultivate, capacity. So it's all about trying as a verb, and that trying as a verb, triage as it relates to administration, is the action of assorting according to equality. It's a classification. It's a predetermination classification. A picking out, a sorting, to pick, cull, see try as a verb. There seems to be some influence from or convergence with Latin tria, 3. And even people in Chicago, some of those that are deeply rooted in Chicago, when they count, they go 1, 2, 3. Triage, 1, 2, 3. As in triage for coffee beans of the third or lowest quality. So triage isn't what you might have thought, huh? See, a lot of people think about hospital triage and they see about emergency and everything. No, it's just a matter of telling you, okay, which patient needs to be assessed and taken care of immediately, first and foremost, as opposed to the guy that might be able to wait for a little while. You know, this guy over here that's bleeding out, we might want to take care of him first. So we classify him first. Okay? In World War I, adopted for the sorting of wounded soldiers into groups according to the severity of their injuries from French use. See, we get the English language has a lot of French adoptions, right? So let's take a look at the last one. It's a contract term and condition under the environmental protection. Remember, I told you that I like that executive office of the Environmental Protection Agency. So here we have an agency, Environmental Protection Agency, with affluent guidelines to guide and standards. General pre-treatment regulations for existing and new sources of pollution. Remember the definition of pollution, folks? You guys remember that? Anybody tell me what the etymology of pollution says? Because you know I'm not going to be afraid to share it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you talked about, Keith. And you said the pollution means to discharge, and it has to do with the discharging of semen from the, you know, the penis.
Without sex, without having
Exactly.
intercourse.
Exactly.
We got that? Everybody see that? Pollution, discharge of semen other than during sex. Later, it was desecration, profanation, defilement, legal or ceremonial uncleanness. Pollution is a legal or ceremonial uncleanness. Did you pollute the record? Did you put errors in the record? Did you claim that you were a United States citizen? Did you claim that you were a resident and didn't have a fucking idea, one, of how to run a business, except for maybe selling weed out of your apartment? Did the baby pollute his diaper? So we got to understand these terms being used, folks.
Well, it would appear that way if you are intending to utilize instruments because it's their instrument created by those agencies and organization. And if you purport to be an agent or resident or citizen of the United States, then you would be performing those functions. But if you are one who is not utilizing any of those tools, then you would not be included in their, you know,
Well,
their
and it's
practice.
not just the utilization either. It has to go with your intent as well. You can be traveling down the road in a car, but to be driving would be of an intent. So it's not just the use. um, so the last one I got here, and then I'll pull up that 28 USC 1604 and 1605 for Brother King El Bay. This one here is variances from categorical pretreatment standards for fundamentally different factors. Factors. So let's put up Benefactors. And there you have it in chat. And there we have it up on the screen. Benefactors. This is the capacity we need to comprehend, because there are variances from the categorical pretreatment standards for fundamentally different benefactors. Even the benefactors are going to have variances. So it's important, again, to herald the legacy heir of a benefactor and let the record reflect that for those variances from categorical pretreatment standards that are fundamentally different factors, I'm sorry, we can't allow such a record to be produced at this time. However, if upon bringing this child up in the ways of the Lord and he doesn't veer off from the ways of the Lord, God willing, he'll be able to make that decision on his own. But until then, we can't make that choice for him.
Can we look up the etymology of herald?
Oh, yeah, sure. That brings up elders, as in alders, as in the oral history, and her ald. It's the mother's story, her ald. It came from her ancestry, heraldry, wherein we describe our talents on a coat of arms with a family crest. Herald etymology. Oops. Messenger, envoy, as a surname, from Anglo-French heraud, from Old French herot, from Frankish herewald, commander of an army, or a similar Germanic source, from Proto-Germanic harja, meaning army, karo, war, see Harry, that's why they call it Harry Carey, wald as, to command, rule, See, wheeled, it was you were wielded from your mother's womb. The form fits, but the sense evolution is difficult to explain unless it is in reference to the chief officer of a tournament who introduced knights and made decisions on rules, which was one of the early senses, others often as herald of arms, though not the earliest in English. Herald, to sound the praises of. Heralded, hark the herald angels sing. So, let's take a look at Ald. Old English Ald is the same as old. It's your elders. It's the older people that told the oral histories, antique of ancient origin, belonging to antiquity, primeval, long in existence or use, near the end of the normal lifespan, elder, mature, experienced, grown-up adult, originally past participle stem of a verb meaning grow, nourish, to grow up, alderman, the original comparative and superlative elder, eldest, are retained in particular use.
I put in the word bold, like in a bold, but instead of with the A attached to the word bold, just bold by itself, BODE.
And my apologies, I didn't change that screen, so let me do that so you guys see. When you put in ALD, A-L-D, it comes up A-U-L-D, which is a variant of old. Aldermen, elders. So, the next one, 28 U.S. Code 1604, immunity. This is one King L. Bay wanted me to look at. Immunity of foreign state from jurisdiction, subject to existing international agreements to which the United States is a party. At the time of enactment of this act, a foreign state shall be immune from the jurisdiction of the courts of the United States and the states, except as provided in sections 1605 to 1607 of this chapter. So, the enumeration at birth is evidence of a foreign state because it is the conference of a nationality onto someone who supposedly doesn't have one as a foreign state. Okay? Understand that process is evidence of a foreign state. So then we look at 1605. General exceptions to the jurisdictional immunity of a foreign state. Is there a particular one you wanted me to look at here, brother?
Two.
Okay. A foreign state shall not be immune from the jurisdiction of the courts of the United States or of the states in any case in which the action is based upon commercial activity carried on in the United States by the foreign state, or upon an act performed in the United States in connection with commercial activity of the foreign state elsewhere, or upon an act outside the territory of the United States in connection with commercial activity of the foreign state elsewhere, and that act causes a direct effect in the United States. That direct effect in the United States is that debt. You're affecting the debt with that commercial transaction because you're not knowing how to be a creditor unto a lender unto the nations. If you're going to be in an effect, then you want it to be a positive effect, so the federal government would come back and give you a reward rather than try to come back and sanction you. And that's what's happening. You're actually, again, not because you know any better, because nobody's been taught this stuff. You're actually placing a liability on the public record. And that's a debt being placed against the United States, and they're saying you're not going to be held immune for it. Okay, fine. If I'm not going to be held immune for it, then I'm not going to hold you immune to the very gift that you conferred upon me and are now trying to use against me. So let's take a look at 1606, which is terrorism exception to the jurisdictional immunity of a foreign state. And responsibility of foreign states for international terrorism against the United States. This is relative. We don't need to read that anymore, so I'll just drop the screen sharing from now on. That's relative to the concept that if you see a felony happening, you're supposed to do something about it. See something, do something. See something, say something, whatever. This comes to the fact that so many things happen nowadays that we consider evil simply because a good man doesn't stand up and do something about them. Too many people sitting back and say, well, I don't want to be a part of that. They're just going to come after me.
But it's just so much. This stuff is so convoluted. It's so, you got one statute conflicting with another. It's so many conflictions. That's why I go back to 1 U.S.C. 1. It's just it, and then they'll hold you to some stuff because they know that you're ignorant, and they know that they can hold your head underwater to these fallacies because they know they don't get personal jurisdiction, but they're going to use the presumption. That's why I try to tell people understand what they're doing, follow the source of law, look at where the source is coming from so that you can determine if you disqualify, if you meet those. Did you meet those requisites that they said that you had to perform to be able to be in the jurisdiction?
Yeah, and that's why I point out that Rule 17, you got to be an officer of some sort. You have to be claiming that resident. And that's the very problem. When you're claiming a resident, you're claiming that you're subject to the administrative courts just by that claim. And it's a false claim at that. And they know it most generally, because like I showed, they know they don't have personal jurisdiction unless they get a waiver. They have to have that waiver, folks. That's Federal Rules of Civil Procedure Rule 4, Subpart K. Read it. They have to have that waiver. One rule destroys the entire situation for them. If they have to have that waiver to acquire personal jurisdiction, then they know they don't have personal jurisdiction and that they have to send a summons through diplomatic channels of notice at that, and that has to be done by the plaintiff, not by the court. The plaintiff has to do that. They're supposed to send the summons and the personal jurisdiction waiver. Then the court is supposed to receive notice and proof that that process has been followed.
This is why I like watching, Keith, because these are all due process issues. This is a procedural due process.
Absolutely.
In which they're in violation of. This is a requirement that they can't get around.
Yeah, and it's related to that postal rule, guys. Again, if you guys don't understand the importance of the jurisdiction of the post office and the exclusive jurisdiction under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7 and 17, NEPA places and buildings along postal roads, that's so that they can give that exclusive jurisdiction through interlocal agreements if you give them an address so they can cover their ass for whatever's happening on that property. Because they're the ones with the real estate investment trust. That's what backs and ensures the citizenship. That's where they get their full faith and credit to be able to pay you anything. Even a Federal Reserve note. That's constituted with an agreement with the Postal Service. Federal Reserve has an agreement with the Postal Service. The United States has an agreement. The IRS. The only ones that don't are the 50 states. They have an agreement with the United States to do all that for them. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Anyway, with that, we are done for the evening. I want to tell everybody, let everybody know I appreciate your support. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal button down there. Anybody wants to share some love, please feel free. It's all appreciated. And anything you guys have to say on the way out, please let me know now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. And anytime, brother, all glory goes to him. Appreciate you coming up. Always glad to have you up, brother. You bring some good information to the platform, so please feel free. Iman, anything from you, sister? All right. Well, with that then, folks, we are out. You know me. I love you. I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. And that's say I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's for you. So may God bless you and have a good night. Bye now. So imagine this and imagine that. Go ahead and chit chat and give facts that live fat and mismatch and dispatch that true latch that did catch and attach the idea hatch from a mishap and a bid stack quit that of which that she was blind. It's the latter that gathers the chatter that matters and flatters the flat earthers and trolling truthers and masters of the rappers of the OG chapters, which captures the stature of the pastors that are plastered in the hereafter your raptured minds. The sitting, spitting, and splitting decisions with precision and a vision of committing and missions and supervision of depositions and the acquisitions for fruition. Now lickety split, flick my bick, bit my lip in a bit non-bit. Flip that shit while I make it real quick as I flip the script and spit a lick to fit into wit with no end in. So damn lit and firm ass grip like water, drip, drip, drip. Have patience though, that ain't it. Stay right where you sit as I kick it and stick it anywhere you pick it. Make sure you listen so you don't miss it and feel like a misfit. Or a dimwit that ain't worth shitting if you don't like it and have a fit. Here's my ass. Now kick it and kiss it and lick it with a spit it. Everything you've seen from Project Bluebeam, how to chew things, what you do when you pee, what foods do you eat, anything about shoes or feet, how you're so damn unique. But you seem to be in a fool's scene that only you believe when this is a new scene and especially brewed gene that grew mean and I ain't here to play. So say what you gotta say, make sure it's not a replay, and let's remember we don't have all day. Because you can't battle me or rattle me. Just like you can't paddle me, you can't saddle me or straddle me like cattle be. It doesn't matter to me what you blabber to me. What's sadder to see is that you're not badder than me, just fatter than me, and you have a flatter chest than me. So take the bad beat with your cracked teeth and chapped cheeks and grab the back seat and rest your flat feet. This is one OG you can't